Hey guys, Crystal here from Elite Hair Care USA. So we're doing another informational kind of Sunday car chronicles kind of thing. And if it wants to turn around, it will. This particular video is all about hypothyroidism and hair loss. And I am most definitely the expert in this subject. Why? Because I do not have a thyroid, and I too fight thyroid disease. I am hypothyroid. Once you don't have a thyroid, you're hypothyroid. So that comes automatically. I get this question a lot. I hear this concern a lot. Okay, so apparently I'm not gonna get the light. I have this conversation quite a few times throughout the day, if not quite a few times on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram, that kind of thing. So for those of you that don't know what hypothyroidism is, there is a gland right about here. It's somewhere in between here. It's a little butterfly looking gland. And that gland controls your hormones, specifically your T3 and your T4 hormones. It also works in conjunction with your pituitary gland, which is in the head. That gland also controls your cycle. That gland also controls your, what I call bipolarness, because people with hypothyroidism typically are not the most normal people, right? So when it comes to hypothyroidism, there's a lot of different symptoms, and everybody is going to endocrine gland, correct, Adrian? So we see endocrinologists. Endocrinologists are typically responsible for diabetes, are responsible for thyroid. They're responsible for, I forgot what is the other part of the endocrine system. Don't quote me, but I know for certain my endocrinologist that I see is responsible for my thyroid. He's also responsible for diabetes, that kind of thing. So it's all a part of what we call the endocrine system. I had my thyroid removed, not by choice, of course, but because I had a tumor grow onto my thyroid gland. I did not know if it was cancerous or not. So that was the only way to basically figure it out and get in order, was to remove the entire gland and chop that baby up to make sure that it wasn't actually cancerous. So that put me in the realm of what we call hypothyroidism. They also have hyperthyroidism, where the difference between the two is hyper is an overactive particular situation, and hypo is underactive. So that means your metabolism, typically for hypothyroid patients or people who don't have a thyroid at all, you're typically on the scale of the lower scale, where your metabolism is at a complete halt. You typically experience more hair loss than the person who's hyper. Your mood change constantly. Your hormones are always kind of more, they're if not more suppressed than anything. You always typically have dry skin, a lot of dry patches. That comes along with the thyroid, along with so many other characteristics. And one of the main characteristics with thyroid disease, especially hypo, is hair loss, hair thinning, and balding, right? Hyper, typically they sweat profusely. They don't experience so much hair loss, but their metabolism is at an extremely fast rate. Weight loss is not a problem for them, whereas hypo, weight gain, is our problem. So if you guys ever pay attention to me, you'll notice that my weight goes like this, up and down all the time, up and down. I feel like if I eat a burger today, I'm gaining 20 pounds tomorrow. So that's how it works. But the main reason for this video is to talk about hair loss when it comes on to, when it comes on to the thyroid, right? I have not experienced hair loss when it comes on to hypothyroidism, because my situation was controlled from the beginning. Where I found out about it, my thyroid levels, my T3, T4, TSH, all of my levels were normal. My problem was I had a tumor on it. That didn't make me irregular, but it made a situation where I had to get the thyroid taken out. So where some people, they have hypothyroidism and they don't know, and years and years and years go by to the point where they finally decide it's time to go to the doctor, time to see what's going on. And when they do catch it, That's typically at the point where now you have to get your hormones in order, and you have to get your T3 and your T4 in order as well. So I'm a little different from most, because I found out right at that point, and I started treating mine because I had no choice. I got it removed, and treatment starts right away. Furthermore, I was pregnant at the same time, so that made it even more intense. On top of that, where hair loss wasn't a big issue for me, but what I did notice over time is that the ends, if you ever notice someone who has hypothyroid, the tail end of their eyebrows are either gone or very thin. So if you look at the tail end of my eyebrows, it's much thinner than the front part of my eyebrows. And that's one of the things. It affects the hair follicle in general. So what happens to the scalp? What happens to the head? What happens to the hair when you're hypothyroid and your levels are out of whack? Number one, you start experiencing thinning, but you're not thinning in patches like alopecia. So don't get that mixed up. A lot of people get that mixed up where they're like, oh, I have patches. That's because of my thyroid. No, ma'am. That's not how it works. Typically, when you have hypothyroidism and you are thinning, it's thinning all the way around and not just in patches. So sometimes you can be hypothyroid or have hypothyroidism, right? And still have alopecia on top of it. And people who are hypothyroid are more susceptible to alopecia areata than any other autoimmune disease. Hypothyroidism is an autoimmune disease. It affects the blood, it affects the hormones. So what happens? If it's affecting the blood, remember the hair goes through 3 phases. It grows up, grows out, falls out, grows up, grows out, falls out. That's the easiest way to explain it. So what ends up happening is if your blood levels are incorrect in regards to your hormones, specifically your T3 and your T4, that causes what we call hair loss. And it begins that phase where as the hair is going through, it grows up, it grows out. By the time you get to the grow out phase, that follicle has died because the nutrients and the hormones that are supposed to go to it are no longer going there, number one. Number two, you might just be out of whack completely, and your hormones might be imbalanced out of this world because you don't even know that you're hypothyroid. And it sounds crazy when I say hypothyroid, but when I say it, I mean just that. Hypothyroid, hypothyroidism, all one and the same. Me personally, I don't give a damn how you say it. They're all the same. Okay? Hyper, your symptoms are going to be extremely different. My other half is hyper, so I kind of know a little bit about it, but I don't know a whole bunch. So I am a hypo girl. I know everything about hypothyroidism. I feel like I am like an endocrinologist / hairstylist gone by, because I've had to learn about my body, and I've had to know when certain things were okay and when to get my body checked out. And it was very complicated for me to understand that, Crystal, you're never going to be the same. You are not the same person that you were before you found out that you had this disease, which it is a disease. And it's not something that you catch. It's something that's been living dormant in the body, and it finally just pops right out, and now you know that it's there. So when you're hypothyroid, how do you treat a situation such as hair loss? Like, what can be done? Is there a reverse? Is there a possibility that you could? Absolutely. But for those who find out that they're hypothyroid, have a much better chance of not having so much hair loss as the person who didn't find out until later on down the road because they ignored the signs and the symptoms and they didn't get themselves checked out. And this is the same thing that I said in my diabetes video the other day when it's about taking care of yourself. You have to know when something is just not right. You have to know when, if you see something, even the basic as just going to get a physical and doing your basic blood work will make a humongous difference in life for you. So that's the reason why I tell people all the time to take very good care of yourself. See your physician. As much as I can't stand modern medicine, I have no choice but to deal with it, because the situation like myself, where I now lack the gland that I need, where some have the gland that they need, and they can see holistic doctors, I didn't get that option because I had to get mine removed. So now I am artificially creating that hormone and artificially working to make sure that my... Okay guys, so my phone keeps buffering. I'm going to actually do this video in a part 2. So please check back for part 2 in a couple minutes.